Howdy folks, Zappos here. Some modders in the community wanted to add unique animations for their weapons, and explaining the process to each person individually is quite a pain. Therefore, I made this tutorial going over everything anyone might be wondering regarding this topic. I'll go over 3 things here: weapon actor edits, animation script edits, and creating a new BFRES file for the new animations. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to use a spear weapon as the base and give a custom animation only for the first hit in a combo, but same workflow and logic can be applied to other weapon animations. Before we start though, we need some stuff to work with. Toolbox by Kills Gaming for matching parameters with animations, Wildbits to edit script files, Breath of the Wild Unpacker or any SARC tool being able to unpack and repack title BG, and of course a Breath of the Wild compatible animation file. I also recommend to use Notepad++ for easier edits of YAML files, since Wildbits isn't very function rich. Without further ado, let's begin! Hope you can keep up. First off, we have to edit the weapon's actor. I'm going to use Wildbits for that, so you might as well follow along. So, you go to Open, and you navigate to your actor file. Alright, once you open your actor, you're going to go into the General Param List folder and open the BG Param List file. Open it as YAML, and here you will have a list. If you scroll down, you're gonna see a name of your weapon. In my case, it's gonna be a spear, since we're going over with a spear. Here you can see a weapon subtype. Now the subtype string is a unique name that game refers to in the animation script files we are about to edit. You can type in whatever you want, but do remember that it's case sensitive, so when you're referring to this string in the BAS files, you mustn't forget the capital letters. I will name it Fists. Note that if you want to do that for the bow or potentially a shield, it is unfortunately impossible. The developers may have let the attribute in the param list for them, but the game does not consider a bow or a shield an entity that has a weapon subtype. I don't exactly know why, and I've been looking into it for days, but it just seems like a leftover from melee weapons. Now that we have added the subtype, let's get to animation script files. So, to get to the script files, you have to unpack title BG. Now once you're done with that, you have to open up Wildbits and search for the Game ROM Player SB Actor pack located in the Title BG Actor pack folder. Here you will have a list of all the BAS files that contain information about triggering animations under different conditions. Since we want to give our weapon unique animation for the first hit in the combo, we need to find player_cut_s1.bas. Open it up as YAML, and you better oil up some cogwheels in your head, because here's what a bit of fuckery needs to be done. No need to panic, but judging by the length of the video and my lackluster writing and explanation skills, we're going to be here for a while. I apologize in advance. Let's say you want to give your spear weapon a subtype. First, we need to look for a type index that chooses weapon types, and let me tell you that weapon types and weapon subtypes are not the same thing. The type index that interests us is 98, and in this case, it should be in the first element of the file. I will briefly explain each type index we encounter, but more information about those can be found on Zelda Mod's wiki page, with a link in the description. So all the elements that contain children are branches, and I'm going to refer to them this way for the rest of the video. These branches tell the game what children to go to, based on a condition defined by the type index. If the type index is, for example, 98, then it checks what type of weapon is currently worn by the player. Each value parameter corresponds to the child parameter with the same index. If the game chooses value 1 as true, then it will refer to child 1, and in this case, we'll go to the element 8. Now that we know how these work, we want to add the subtype to a spear, so let's see what element does the game choose if our weapon type is weapon spear. In this case, it goes to element 11, because the value of child 0 parameter is 11. Duh. Now, when we jump to this element, we see its type index is 16. There are also some ranges defined with start and an end, but that doesn't tell us very much at the moment. Again, this is another branch element because it has children. Here we have a parameters of range instead of value, but the element works the same way as previously. So to figure out what it does, let's see what elements does it choose for each of the range parameters. If the game decides to use range 0, then it jumps to an element 12. Looking up element 12, we see it uses type index of 67, and it also has a parameter file name with a value of spear attack s1. Type index 67 always chooses an animation file of given name to play and contains all the necessary events which tell the game at what frame or in what time range should the animation trigger an attack, let player do the next attack, display effects, play sound, and so on. Before we dive into these parameters, let's go back to the element that has chosen the element we're at and see where else it goes. Range 1 seems to go to element 13, and if we jump into that, you can see it also chooses an animation file to play because it's of type index 67. However, the name is different. The name of the file seems to be similar to the previous one we've seen, but with advanced suffix. This is another animation file that plays the same attack, but it moves player one world unit forward in the first few frames of the animation. It was designed this way to ensure the player can still reach an enemy if he's a certain range away from. Having that in mind, and looking at the element 11 again, we can deduce that type index 16 chooses an animation file to play depending on how far away the player is from his target. Now that we've gone all the way from a weapon types branch until the element calling animation files, we can start figuring out where to insert a branch that will choose our unique animations based on a weapon subtype. Thinking logically, the game needs to look for a weapon type first, so go down the hierarchy choosing weapon spear. Here, the element 11 checks player's target distance before the attack, so it only makes sense to put our branch in this level of hierarchy. If we were to put the branch after the chosen range instead, we would lose control over our unique weapons have we ever needed to change distance parameters to fit our new attacks, as it would change for all the weapons of chosen weapon type. So what you want to do is create a new element at the end of the file that will be our branch. This branch element is similar to the one that chooses weapon types, so let's go back to the top and copy element 0. Now go down to the bottom and paste it in a new line. Beware of indentations. One missing space and you'll get errors upon saving, so make sure you copy an entire thing. Now that you have it pasted, change this element number to the next one in the file, which in this case is 14. This is important. Those numbers are indexes, and each element must be one after another. To make this new element our subtype branch, all we need to do is change the type index to 97. Remember when we edited weapons actor to give it a subtype name? Now in our element 14, we need to type it exactly the same as before into the value 0 parameter instead of weapon spear. Go ahead and do that. After that, delete the whole value 1 parameter as we don't really need it, and change value 2 parameter name to value 1. It is imperative to mention the default value must always be present because it will get chosen for every weapon that doesn't have one of the
listed values
in this element. Because, you know, the default subtype is basically none. Do the same thing to the children. Delete child 1, leave child 2, and change its name to child 1. The point of this is so that child 1, which is chosen if there is no subtype, default, will lead to default spear attack elements. Since we're done with that, remember this element number and go back to the top where weapon type is chosen and change child 0 value to 14, because we want the game to check whether a weapon spear is our unique weapon or not by leading it to our new branch. Remember that child 0 originally went to element 11, because now we have to reference that element in our branch for the default value. Go back to element 14 and change child 1 value to 11. Now all we need to do is give our unique weapon same kind of elements that a default spear weapon uses. For that, we can copy all elements that originally went down the hierarchy starting from weapon spear's child. This child was originally element 11, which goes to element 12 and element 13, so copy all those and paste them at the bottom of the file. Now it's just a matter of changing numbers. First, let's fix element numbers so they are ascending. Starting from 14, next one should be 15 instead of 11, then 16 instead of 12, and 17 instead of 13. Once we're done with that, let's change the children element references. Starting at element 14, child 0 goes to 15 because we want that new element hierarchy to be chosen if our weapon has a subtype of the name defined in value 0, which in my case is fists. Next, in element 15, child 0 goes to 16, while child 1 goes to 17. All that's left is changing the animation file names in both element 16 and element 17 to the ones we want to use for our unique weapon, and tweaking some parameters. I'm not going to explain what each parameter does, as the information on that can be found on Zelda Mods Wiki. Anyways, the process of tweaking those parameters basically comes down to looking at your animation in the toolbox and inserting frame values at which game will trigger an event. Do that for the animation file referenced at element 16 and copy everything over to element 17 once you're done. All parameters are usually the same in both, because the only thing that's different is that the latter animation is supposed to move the player forward in the world, though for that you do it in the animation itself. One thing worth mentioning is that you can tweak the leap distance by changing range values in your element 15 to trigger the advance animation instead, if the attacks can't reach the target. Save the BAS file, save the GameROM player file, and remember that unless you're using BCML to calculate RSTB, you have to update the size of the BAS file and GameROM player file, as both got more data after edits. Besides that, we're done here, and we can pack the TitleBG folder with our edits. Now we're done!
Wait, we are?
No, we're totally done.
Last part is optional, but if you are planning to add animations rather than replace them, it's better to create a brand new BFRES file for it. The reason for that is the game either can't read the file, and this results in a crash, or reads it as if nothing was there, which makes all player animations turn into a T-pose. The fix is to create a new file containing our additional animations. Grab a copy of your player animation as BFRES and paste it into the content model path in your mod files. It's best to change its name to something that will not conflict with other potential mods using the same approach. I'm going to name it player_melee mod as BFRES. Now open it up in Toolbox and rename it there as well. Make sure the names are identical. Next, right-click on the animations folder and select Clear to remove all the animations we don't need. Right-click on it again and create New Skeletal Animation. You will see a new animation has been created. You can either replace it or delete it and import new ones. I'll go ahead and remove it and import new animation that I got from Autodesk Maya. As you may have noticed, we can't preview the animations without a model, so let's also import a link from TitleBG. Now, select your animation and it should play in the viewport. This is also an optional step, but it's worth noting that it's best to add FloorContact data for the feet and toes, so Link doesn't clip through the ground. To do that, go into the User Data tab and add an element named FloorContact_. Again, it's case sensitive, so keep that in mind. Then it's followed by either ankle_ or toe_, after which goes the side, L_ or R_. Look at your animation and see at what frames Link touches the ground with his feet and toes, and add elements for each of those parts. Set the type to single, and type in values that represent the frame at which the leg part should make the contact with the ground. The first value you type is the one telling game that at this and next frames this part should stick to the ground. The next value you type in the next line is a frame at which the named part is supposed to lift off the ground. This logic can be repeated for animations like running or jumping. The FloorContact data can be used not only with ankles or toes, but also for hands, if you want Link to touch the ground with his hands at a given time. If you need references for this, just take a look at the User Data tab in Original Link's animations. Once you're done, remove Link from Hierarchy in Toolbox, just so you don't accidentally save the wrong file. Save it, and now it's time to register this BFRES file in Player ASlist. Open up WildBits and import GameROM player we edited earlier. Here, expand the actor list, then ASlist, and open player BASlist as YAML. And before you drown yourself in madness coming from a freshly gained PTSD, I'm just going to tell you it's going to be quick and easy. All you need to do is copy one of the addRes lines and paste it below. Change the number to 3 and give it the same name you gave your BFRES file. I don't need to tell you it's important that you get the name right, because you already know it, right? Save it, update RSTB if you don't use BCML, and we're done. That seems to be all. I hope I wasn't too boring and my explanation was clear enough for everyone to follow this tutorial. I'm guessing this video got really long, but I wanted to make sure everything was thoroughly explained for a minimum amount of confusion. The whole process may be really confusing at first, despite my best efforts, but once you get the hang of it, everything should get pretty easy and straightforward. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see some amazing animation mods from the community. See ya!
Yes, this video was scripted because I'm terrible at spontaneous explanations.